Today I'm going to explain what the Magdalene Codes are, where the idea comes from, what history actually says about Mary Magdalene, what parts are spiritual belief, and what parts are debated by scholars. This explanation is meant to be educational and grounded in facts while also explaining why so many people connect deeply to this topic. The phrase Magdalene Codes is not found in the Bible. It is not the name of any ancient religious text that historians have discovered. It is a modern spiritual term that began appearing in books, online teachings, and spiritual communities in recent decades. Different teachers use it in different ways, but they generally mean the same thing. When people talk about the Magdalene Codes, they are referring to a system of spiritual ideas connected to Mary Magdalene. These ideas focus on the sacred feminine, the body as holy, spiritual wisdom through love and grief, and the balance between masculine and feminine energy. The word codes does not mean secret letters hidden in scripture. It means spiritual knowledge or wisdom that people believe was lost, ignored, or pushed aside over time. There is no official list of Magdalene codes. Some teachers speak of 7 codes, others speak of 12 or even 33. These numbers are symbolic, not historical. They often match numbers used in other spiritual traditions to represent growth, balance, or completeness. To understand why Mary Magdalene is so important in this teaching, it is necessary to understand who she was according to history, the Bible, and ancient religious writings. Who was Mary Magdalene, according to history? Mary Magdalene is one of the most well-known women in Christian history. She appears in all 4 Gospels in the New Testament. She was present at the crucifixion of Jesus. She was also the first person recorded as seeing Jesus after the resurrection. This alone shows that she held an important role in the early Christian story. For many centuries, churches taught that Mary Magdalene had been a prostitute before following Jesus. There is no clear biblical evidence for this claim. This idea came from later church teachings, not from the original gospel texts. In the Bible, she is simply described as a woman who had been healed by Jesus and then followed him as a devoted student. In 1969, the Roman Catholic Church officially clarified that there is no proof that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. This correction came very late in history, after the false story had already shaped how people viewed her for hundreds of years. In early Christian writings outside the Bible, especially in Gnostic texts, Mary Magdalene appears as a teacher, a leader, and a spiritual authority. Some of these writings show that she understood the teachings of Jesus deeply. In some cases, male disciples argue with her or challenge her authority. These stories show that women did hold leadership roles in some early Christian communities before later religious systems removed them. Because of this, many modern spiritual teachers see Mary Magdalene as a symbol of lost feminine wisdom in religion. She represents a voice that was once powerful, but later silenced. What does sacred feminine mean? The sacred feminine is a spiritual idea that refers to nurturing, intuitive, emotional, creative, and life-giving forms of power. It does not mean only women. It represents qualities that exist in all people, both men and women. For many centuries, most organized religions focused almost entirely on masculine images of God. God was described as a father, a king, a judge, and a ruler. Feminine qualities such as intuition, emotional intelligence, caregiving, and embodied wisdom were often ignored or treated as weak. The Magdalene Codes teachings focus on restoring balance. They teach that spirituality should include both masculine and feminine qualities, strength and compassion, logic and intuition, action and feeling. In these teachings, Mary Magdalene represents the feminine side of spiritual wisdom, returning to the center instead of the edges. What does the body have to do with the Magdalene Codes? One of the strongest themes in Magdalene Code teachings is the body as sacred. For many generations, people were taught that the body is something to control, punish, or ignore in order to be spiritual. Sexuality was often framed as dirty or dangerous. Grief was treated as weakness. Physical pleasure was treated as sinful. The Magdalene Codes reverse this idea. They teach that the body is not separate from the soul. The body is where spiritual wisdom is lived, not escaped. According to this view, emotions are not weaknesses. They are information. The womb is not shameful. It is sacred because it represents creation. Touch is not sinful. It is how humans bond and feel safe. These beliefs are deeply connected to trauma healing today. Many people who grew up in strict religious systems carry shame in their body. They learn to fear their own feelings and physical needs. Magdalene Code teachings focus on helping people reclaim safety in their body instead of treating the body as a problem. Why grief is central to Magdalene teachings. Grief is one of the most important themes connected to Mary Magdalene. In the Gospel story, she stood by Jesus at his death when many others had fled. She witnessed loss directly. She was also the first to witness the resurrection. Because of this, many teachers view Magdalene as the archetype of sacred grief. This means grief that transforms instead of destroys, grief that opens the heart instead of closing it, grief that becomes a doorway to deeper compassion. In Magdalene Code teachings, grief is not something to rush through. It is something to honor. It is treated as a sacred gateway to healing. For many people who have experienced trauma, loss, abuse, or abandonment, this message is powerful. It says that pain does not mean failure. It means transformation is possible. Where do these ideas come from? The Magdalene Codes are considered modern because the phrase itself is new. However, the ideas behind it come from many ancient sources. One source is early Christian mysticism. This includes writings from the first few centuries after Jesus that were not included in the Bible. Some of these texts highlight feminine wisdom, divine love, and inner spiritual knowledge. Another source is Gnosticism. Gnostic traditions taught that spiritual knowledge comes from within, and that divine wisdom is found through direct experience rather than strict religious rules. Another influence is Egyptian spirituality. Ancient Egyptian religion honored many powerful goddesses connected to healing, rebirth, protection, and sacred tears. Isis is one of the most well-known. She was associated with resurrection through love, grief, and sacred ritual. Many people see symbolic connections between Isis and Mary Magdalene. Other influences include priestess traditions, temple healing practices, and sacred sexuality teachings from ancient cultures around the world. These systems taught that sexual energy is life force energy and that it can be used for healing and spiritual connection rather than shame. Modern Magdalene teachers blend all of these influences together into one spiritual framework. What the Magdalene Codes are not. It is important to clearly explain what the Magdalene Codes are not. They are not a secret Bible code. There is no hidden pattern in Scripture that spells out these teachings. They are not a lost ancient manuscript. No archaeologist has ever discovered a scroll titled the Magdalene Codes. They are not official church doctrine. Most churches do not recognize these teachings. They are not scientifically provable. These ideas belong to the world of spiritual belief, personal experience, and symbolic meaning. This does not mean they have no value. It simply means they are not history in the same way that dates, battles, and written records are history. Why so many people are drawn to the Magdalene Codes. Many people come to Magdalene teachings after experiencing religious trauma. They may have grown up in systems that taught fear, shame, punishment, or silence. These teachings offer an alternative that centers love, healing, and embodiment. Others come through grief. Losing a child, a parent, a partner, or a sense of identity can break a person open in painful ways. The Magdalene story offers a map for how grief can become transformation rather than despair. Some people come through trauma recovery. Sexual abuse, domestic violence, emotional neglect, and chronic stress all disconnect people from their body. Magdalene Codes focus on returning safety and trust to the body instead of bypassing it. Many women are drawn to these teachings because they never saw themselves reflected in spiritual leadership. Magdalene represents a woman who was devoted, intelligent, brave, and spiritually powerful in a world that later tried to erase her voice. The criticism and debate scholars and theologians often criticize Magdalene Codes because they blend history with spiritual symbolism. They argue that some claims about Mary Magdalene go beyond what ancient sources can prove. These scholars are correct that there is no solid historical evidence that Mary Magdalene was married to Jesus, part of a secret bloodline, or trained in Egyptian mystery schools. Those ideas come from speculation, symbolic interpretation, and modern storytelling. Another criticism is commercialization. Some people turn Magdalene teachings into expensive programs, retreats, or certification courses. When sacred ideas become products, it creates concern about exploitation. There is also debate inside Christianity about these teachings. Some Christians feel they pull attention away from traditional doctrine. Others feel they offer healing to people who were harmed by strict interpretations. The core meaning of the Magdalene Codes. At their core, the Magdalene Codes represent a return to balance. They teach that the divine is not only masculine. They teach that healing happens through love, grief, embodiment, and compassion. They teach that the body is sacred. They teach that intuition matters. They teach that feminine wisdom belongs in spiritual leadership. They are not about replacing Jesus. They are about restoring feminine spiritual authority alongside masculine authority. They are not about rejecting religion. They are about healing the wounds that religion sometimes caused. They are not about rewriting history with fantasy. They are about finding meaning and healing through symbolic truth. Why this topic matters today. Today, many people feel spiritually disconnected. They feel burned by institutions. They feel overwhelmed by trauma. They feel numb inside their own body. The Magdalene Codes speak directly to these struggles. They speak to people who were told to stay silent. They speak to people who were told their feelings were sinful. They speak to people whose bodies never felt safe. Whether someone believes in these teachings or not, their emotional impact is real for many people. They offer language for healing that traditional systems often failed to provide. Final summary. The Magdalene Codes are a modern spiritual framework centered on Mary Magdalene as a symbol of sacred feminine wisdom. They focus on healing through the body, honoring grief, restoring balance between masculine and feminine energy, and returning compassion and embodiment to spiritual life. They are not a hidden Bible code. They are not a lost manuscript. They are not proven by archaeology. They are symbolic teachings drawn from many ancient sources and woven together in modern times. Some people find deep healing through them. Others do not connect with them at all. Both responses are valid. What matters is understanding what the Magdalene Codes truly are, instead of repeating myths and confusion. Now you know what people mean when they use this term.